First one, with authority.
I call to order the Monday, July 13th, 2020 meeting of the Crewe Town Council. If everyone would join with me in a moment of silent prayer and reflection. Thank you. And if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda will be legislative updates. Tonight we have two very special guests, our state senator and state delegate, Frank Ruff and Tommy Wright, who will talk to us a little bit about what's happening in Richmond and how that impacts the town of Crewe. I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Who lost the coin toss? But
I generally defer to my senior colleague here, and I go first. First, I want to say I'm glad to be here tonight. Appreciate the invitation, and I know we have Mayor. I think it's your first meeting tonight. Congratulations you, and I know we have a couple of new town council members. I understand. At any rate, I'm glad to be here with you and have the opportunity to give you some of the highlights that I see from the General Assembly. I won't speak real long, but the first thing I want to start off with is the redistricting. That's something you've heard a lot about. You know, gerrymandering is a process that's been in place politically for years as far as redrawing the districts. They're redrawn every 10 years based upon the census. And so this year is a chance up to the voters to supposedly do it by redistricting, by commission, or whether we'll have gerrymandering. Both houses of both sides of the House of Delegates decided a couple of years ago that we both agree to go with redistricting, and we'd have to change the Constitution in order to do so. And so we put it on the agenda for the legislature, and it passed. And now it's passed twice, and now we've got to have an election that goes to the voters this fall. So if it passes this fall, that means that gerrymandering will be a thing of the past. And both parties, whichever party was in power, used it to their political advantage. And a lot of people didn't like it, and I can understand that. And so it was voted on this year at the General Assembly, and it passed. So the only thing remaining is to see what the voters have to say about it. So it'll be a commission that has 16 members. It'll be, I think, 4 legislators, and then other members on the commission. And it'll save a lot of court debates that we've had in the past over it, and I think the general public will view it as being fairer. Hopefully, it'll take away the split counties like Lunenburg. My county is split. It'll even hopefully take care of all split precincts. Some counties and towns have split precincts, and it's very difficult to get a vote. So we'll see what happens, but that's one good thing I think that the legislature agreed on this year. Another thing, as far as talking about voting, that I didn't think was a good idea, is no photo ID will be required to cast a ballot. And you can't do anything without showing some form of ID. You can't check into a hotel. You can't get into a lot of different events. And I think it's to keep the ballot more secure and safe. I don't see a thing wrong with a person showing the ID when they come to vote. Other issues that we took up this time, which I think will be significant for the state, and I don't think it's necessarily a good idea, is that the casinos, in other words, there's, I think, 4 localities that have been selected. If they pass a referendum, then they can have a casino in their area. And I think, you know, if you look at other areas that's tried that, Atlantic City, New Jersey is a good example of that. It breeds a lot of problems with it. Law enforcement problems, it breeds addiction, you know, problems, crime, and so forth. So we'll have to see what happens. The locality boards will have to pass a referendum in order to get it, but I think it's something that's not good for Virginia. Another thing that passed that I was in favor of was, and a lot of people like it, I know, but it's these machines that appear in fast food places, in convenience stores. They call them gray machines or skill machines. And this time the state actually legalized it, but it put a tax on it. And I've received calls from merchants that, you know, told me, I don't like the fact that the tax has been placed on it. I said, well, this may be true. I said, well, I voted against it anyway. I didn't think it was a good idea to do it. And so anyway, we'll see what happens. But and then too, the lottery will be affected by these types of games. And the lottery, you know, comes back to the localities now to use for education. So that's one thing that could be a bad situation there. Another issue that came up, a very hotly contested issue, was the monument issue. And this has been coming up for several years. And this year it passed. And the locality has the right to remove the monuments, but they have a process to go through. One thing they do is have a public hearing and take a vote. And that's the process, and you'll see in a lot of areas that has not been abided by. And I think that that's an issue that needs to be dealt with, but that did pass, although, like I said, I did not think it was a good idea. There were safeguards on abortion that I'm pro-life, and there are certain safeguards so far as the doctor, the facility was performed in, the knowledge of the woman having the procedure done, and a lot of those were weakened to the point that I don't think the proper safeguards are in place now to take care of those issues. We passed this time many items that are going to wind up costing us money. One of them is when we passed the what's known as the RGGI, the Regional Green Gas House Initiative Act, and that more or less, in the long run, it will do away with fossil fuels. That's the goal of it. And I think that in the long run, if we try to run our electric grid on strictly renewable energies, I personally don't think it can work. If you rely almost entirely on solar and wind, then I think that we've had a very good system in the past. We will be able to keep the 2 natural gas-fired facilities in Brunswick County. The coal burning facility in Clover will be closed, and I just think it's a bad setup. There's going to be taxes raised on gasoline. You've probably already seen some of that take place. Legislation was passed to make it harder on persons that are doing business. There's discussions of minimum wage being increased and so forth. And also, as far as criminal activity, there was legislation passed that will release or allow people to leave parole 280 people that were guilty of serious and violent felonies. And that was one piece of legislation that was passed that I didn't agree with. Nottoway County asked me to look into the possibility of increasing the amount of money that the state gives Nottaway for the inmates at the behavioral center. And what the problem is, when those inmates there commit crimes in the facility, then they are tried and sentenced to Piedmont Regional Jail. But Nottaway has to pay the daily fee. And so a few years ago, I put in legislation, a budget amendment, that reimbursed Nottaway for those expenses. And so with the expansion of the facility, we could see there was a big need to have that increased. And so working with the State Compensation Board, we did get an increase, and it'll be an increase for the next 2 years. That should take care of the increase in that particular fee. This was a very unusual year and a hard year. Even having to go into special session pretty soon. Our budget is one of the problems, one of the reasons, and of course, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the economy had to be throttled, and that has reduced the revenue projections that the state has, and that's what we base the budget on, is the revenue projections. So we're going back in August, is the rumor, we don't know for sure, but that's the rumor, that we're going back in August to consider those issues. And what concerns me is what additional issues may be brought up that I don't think really is the purpose of having the special session. The Speaker of the House has named a committee which is made up of the Courts of Justice Committee in the House and the Public Safety Committee to consider different types of legislation. Some of it deals with defunding police or police reform and so forth. And I'm not in favor of either one of those issues. Also, there's some consideration being given to even making our gun laws stricter than they came out of the last session. The last session, we noticed our Second Amendment rights were reduced. Just for one item, for instance, that you can't buy with one handgun at a time, and you should buy two if you would fit, because if you were to buy a set or buy one for you and your wife, you couldn't do it. There's also the issue of the number of bullets that can be in a magazine, and that's one thing that the public needs protection, and that's a very important issue. Sometimes the police can't get there in time, and I think it's important that those magazines not be restricted to 12 bullets. You see instances happening all the time where that is a problem. But that's some of the key issues. There are a lot more, and I'll leave my friend Senator Ruff to cover some of them for you. And then after he speaks, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate.
Tommy did such a great job, there's nothing for me to say, so I'll just say that. I'll just expand on a couple of things. One, we talked about the elections. After this November, people will be able to register on the day of the election. Now, usually in most counties, there's a lot of coming and going questions. Now to pile on top of that, having new people trying to register at the same time, and how are you going to prove where they live is a little too much and a little too far. Tommy mentioned the gas tax. That's a 78% increase in the state tax on gasoline. Now, we probably need some more money to maintain the roads. I'll concede that. But half of that money is revenge, because Northern Virginia, the 85 corridor, got upset because they were paying more taxes for gas. So they felt like we ought to in the rest of the state. There will be no effort to send half of that money back to this area. That money will be in the faster growing areas. So you will be paying for the wealthy suburbs of Virginia. Cigarettes, the tax will double, the state tax will double to $6 a carton. And if a county wants to put a tax on cigarettes, and I don't think too many counties in Southern Virginia will do it, they can put another $2 on top of that. Tommy touched on the issue of abortion. There are probably 30 or 40 different positions on that in this room, because everybody's got a little bit different perspective. But one of the things that was done was taking away the requirement to see an ID when you have the abortion. What that does is effectively, you can have a 15-year-old, 16-year-old walk in there and get an abortion without any parental consent at all. To get an aspirin at the school, you have to have parental consent. There's something wrong when you set those two examples side by side. Over the last few years, we have worked to not prevent abortions, but to make sure that they were reasonably done, letting people understand totally what was involved, a 24-hour cooling off period, and things like that. The greatest issue in taxes probably will be your electric bill. And that won't happen immediately because it's hidden, it's a stealth tax. And what will happen is that there will be an auction to be able to sell, to pollute. And nobody knows what it's going to cost until that auction begins. And so that will determine what your bill is going to be, is how much is Dominion or whoever going to have to pay to be able to get those tax credits for anything that they put out there. And then on top of that, there will be a new category for people who can't afford the higher electric bills. So everybody will have more to pay on your electric bill to pay for the people who can't pay their electric bill. So it's going to have a doubling effect there. Things that might affect y'all, Greg talked to me last year or a year before, I forgot now which, about the need for water. With the expansion of the facility down here, there was the plan, the prison said it won't take any more water necessary. In fact, it will actually get our prisoners to stop using as much water as they're using, and that was the way they were going to keep the town from going over the limit to start planning for the future. Well, if they had the power to stop the prisoners from using more water, why aren't they doing that today? Obviously they don't. They're going to flush those toilets whenever they want. They're going to let them run water as much as they want. So we got that in the budget included, that water process. In that budget and planning, didn't seem to understand that for every gallon of water that's used, there is an amount of wastewater created. So they didn't include that. They caught it at the last moment before the veto session, but because a couple of the projects elsewhere people were being stricken and not moved forward with, they didn't include that. But I have a commitment that that will be included. So hopefully that won't work out. A concern that all of you should have is what's going to happen with the schools and law enforcement as we go forward. The proposal that the governor had for the schools is not workable in a rural community. To have 10 kids on a bus, you might be able to go through town, but you're not going to be able to go through the county. So we're trying to figure out how we can force that to at least get 30. On a bus that holds 70 kids, at least halfway full. They have been talking about, some of the counties have been talking about 2 days for half the kids and 2 days for the other half the day and 1 day for cleaning the schools. finally, Mecklenburg backed down and said, okay, we'll go 4 days and then have a deep cleaning on Friday. Now, everything we've heard about the virus is that the virus dies after X number of hours. So having a deep cleaning on Friday, and then I could be there on Saturday and Sunday, the virus would have been dead over the weekend anyway. 1 hour after school starts on Monday, it's going to be as dirty as it was when they left school first. So there's no reason why we don't go 5 days, particularly on the K through 3 age group, because those are the kids that are not regulated, have not developed the skills of how to organize themselves. And if you send them to school 2 days a week, or 4 days every other week, we're going to lose a lot of years of education, because maybe a high schooler can do that, but you cannot do that with the younger ones. So we've got to figure out that. Law enforcement is going to be a real problem, because something will happen. There will be more training required. State police have a longer training period than local. If we go to anything, if we go to, what is it, 16 weeks now? If you go to 18, if you go to 20 weeks, that's going to be more expense for the town. Every time there's an expense to go up, then there's going to be an attempt by another community to hire somebody that's already trained. So you're going to have a lot more turnover. And that's not even taking into consideration the reality is that it's not very fashionable to be in law enforcement the last month or so. So you're going to have fewer people who are interested in going into it. So it's going to be a challenge. You're going to end up having to pay a lot more, not only for training, but also for people that are willing to take the job. So I think those are the two things that are going to be the biggest challenges for you. What happens in the mayor asked me a while ago what was going to happen in the special session, and I told him, you tell me, because I had no idea. The governor calls the session. He's got to do it to cover the budget issues. He could stop at that point and just say nothing but the budget, but I think he will include in that some more gun bills. He will include some more law enforcement bills. He could open it up to everything. I don't think he will. I think he'll keep it confined to the issues that he thinks are more important, not necessarily what the people of Virginia think is important. So I hope that gives you some insight. I voted no more this year than I did every year that I had been in Richmond combined. And that was really disturbing because it changes a lot. It's going to be a lot tougher to do business in Virginia. Tommy mentioned minimum wage are going up. It will. It's got a delayed effect until spring next year. But right now, we need to figure out how we can get people back to work, not impeding them a business from being able to operate because electricity bills going up, because payroll expense going up. It will do nothing but harm the small businesses that we have that are really essentially just employment opportunities for families and a few friends. They're not 100-job companies. They're not 50-job companies. They're usually 3 or 4 people. And when you start telling somebody when they only have 2 or 3 or 4 employees that they've got to jump through this hoop, this hoop, this hoop, this hoop, it's not going to be worth it for them to stay in business. I have a restaurant in the district. It's been in the family for 65 years. He's roughly my age. He's putting out, he could not open during the pandemic because of the way he was structured. He was putting out about $1,200 a month in electric bills just to keep he owned the building, so that wasn't a factor. He has to make a decision. Do I just go ahead and retire and hang it up, or do I reopen? And that's the dilemma that every small business is going to have to make when this is all over. Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you, sir.
Tommy would be glad to answer any questions.
Well, before I open up for council, I did want to thank both of you for the, as Delegate Wright mentioned, the payment in lieu of taxes for BCBR and offsetting the cost of incarceration for those residents when they commit a crime. I would be remiss though if I didn't also put a bug in your ear for the other two facilities, Piedmont Geriatric and Nottaway Correctional Center. I know Crew in Burkeville Fire and Nottaway EMS both service those facilities at a cost to those entities. So if there's in the future any more room for additional payment in lieu of taxes, we would certainly appreciate that. But
We working with VML and VACO, we got it almost there, but then it backed off.
okay.
I did want to raise one other issue because you raised it last summer, that fire issue for college students, maybe giving credit. The governor's proposal for the workforce training was to do that, was to provide free tuition for a category of skill training. And part of that was giving back service to the community. And I said, this is perfect. And my contact thought it was perfect, and then the community college said, oh, that's too much bureaucracy, we don't have to want to keep up with all that. So they killed it. But anyway, I still think if you get somebody involved in fire rescue for a year or two, they might decide, hey, this is okay, I don't mind doing that.
Well, we appreciate your effort on that. Does council have any questions?
I've got one question. It sounded like, I didn't catch all of it, but you mentioned something about an act that was passed moving towards getting rid of fossil fuels. What's the timeline? Can you talk a little more? And that's probably why the Dominion bill is going to end up going up, right? Is that, can
Well,
you
that's part
expand
of
on
the
that just a
whole
little bit?
regional gas issue, regional power issue. They put us into, the General Assembly put us into the group that includes New England and most of the northeastern states, which have higher fuel prices than Virginia does. So we will end up being part of that, and that's going to be some cost. That auctioning of those credits will drive that up. The time frame that originally passed, I think, was to do away with fossil fuels by 2050. The governor has arbitrarily started now pushing for 2045. That means a lot of solar and wind. I'm not sure how many acres of solar panels Virginia will have. There are a lot of companies that are looking, but it's not very efficient at this point. It's more efficient than it was last year. It's not as efficient as it's going to be 5 years down the road, but it's still much more expensive than gas.
Another thing about solar power, it takes up so much space, hundreds of acres in a lot of cases. That is not good for the counties either, because you're losing timberland, you're losing farmland, land to develop for houses or other purposes. And Dominion has been put in this position by the legislature. They've told what they're going to do, and they're going to do the best they can to do it. But they've said in hearings and so forth that they can't do it. It's just impossible to generate the amount of electricity that's going to be needed. What they don't have to do is buy electricity from other sources. And as Frank was mentioning, electricity bills going up. That's another reason for it, because they're not going to be able to have this economically or efficient generation of electricity as we have now. And so I'm really concerned about that, what it's going to do to limit the new house construction, the industry and so forth. You've got to have electricity, and it's something that we need to be concerned about.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Well, I did want to thank you two again, both for coming out tonight and for your continued dedication to Nottaway County and the town of Peru. The fact that you do come out here every year and give this legislative update just shows how much you care about us and how much how dedicated you are to the town of Peru. And Ms. Van
I'm sorry, and I'm not sure if I'm out of order or whatever. I just wanted to ask, is there a place online where we can look at what you all were talking about to see, I know that you're talking from memory and I'm sure it's just something in writing.
If you can go online
Mm-hmm,
and go to Virginia LIS,
okay,
that is Virginia Legislative Information Service.
okay,
It will list every bill that passed, every bill that was defeated. It breaks it down by committee or by title or category, about 50, 75 categories. So if you want to look at energy or power, or if you want to look at medical or health, it's just, I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly how it's listed, but each one of them is, you can just go down.
thank you, that's very helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And if everyone would join me in thanking Delegate Rex and Rob.
Anytime we do anything for you, just holler and we'll try. We promise we won't promise we'll get it done, but we'll try.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. And moving on, our agenda tonight, the next item is a public hearing. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing on the rezoning request of 200 West Tennessee Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make clear, as an owner of the community center, I have to recuse myself from discussion of anything to do with it.
So noted. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay, and the town manager will read through the item.
Yes, Mayor and Honorable Mayor and Council, Jim and Ann Stinson are seeking to rezone the properties located at 200 West Tennessee Avenue, parcel numbers 18A29, 351 6A, and 18A29, 351 3 to C1 Commercial District. These properties are currently zoned R3 Residential District. Peru Assembly Center is currently used as an assembly hall. The assembly halls are only permitted in the C1 Commercial District. These properties are currently zoned R3 Residential District. As such, the use of these properties is considered non-conforming. As previously stated, these properties are currently zoned R3 Residential District. According to Section 4.0 of the Town Zoning Code, the district is comprised of high-density residential areas located near the commercial areas or near the center or older part of town. This residential district is not completely residential, as it includes public and semi-public, institutional, and other related uses. However, it is basically residential in character, and as such, it should not be spotted with commercial and industrial uses. The applicant is seeking to rezone these parcels to C1 Commercial District. Section 6.0 of the Town Zoning Code says the purpose of this district is to provide for the establishment or continuance of a business area that is convenient to the whole community. Since the district is a focal point of all business activity, the traffic and parking congestion will be heavy, and off-street parking should be adequate to serve a great number of people. In terms of recommendations, Section 15.2-2284 of State Code lists the relevant factors to consider in rezoning applications. Every proposed rezoning should be accompanied by an analysis of how the amendment will satisfy one or more of these factors. A locality is not required to consider all 9 factors in the decision. The most pertinent factors applicable to this request involve the existing use and character of property and the comprehensive plan. In terms of the existing use and character of property, the subject is presently used as an assembly hall and is a permitted use within the C1 Commercial District. Moreover, properties in close proximity to the subject property, which is just 1/2 block away, are also zoned C1 Commercial District. In terms of the comprehensive future land use map for the town, the property is designated as being within the secondary development corridor. As stated in the comp plan, these corridors have generally good access to public services, shopping, and economic opportunities available within the town, and therefore are good areas for a wide variety of moderately complex, medium-density developments. Secondary development corridors are good areas for a wide range of land uses, including housing subdivisions and small retail and service businesses. They are not appropriate for large industrial developments. Given the description of the secondary development corridor, small-scale assembly halls seem to be a compatible use with this corridor. And given the information provided above, I recommend these parcels be rezoned from R3 residential district to C1 commercial district. And at its June 24th meeting, the Planning Commission also recommended 4-0 that you rezone these parcels to C1 commercial district.
Thank you, Mr. Thrower. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the rezoning? Anyone who wishes to speak for the rezoning? Anyone who wishes to speak for the rezoning?
It's a great idea, you should do it. The community center is awesome, and it's important to our community.
Okay. Anyone who wishes to speak against the rezoning? Anyone who wishes to speak against the rezoning? Anyone who wishes to speak against the rezoning? Okay, I will close this public hearing. Next up on the agenda, the consent calendar. Before we go to the consent calendar, is there anything that council wishes added to the agenda?
Are we voting on the rezoning?
We will, that's included under new business. The public hearing is just to hear from the public. And then, anything? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So,
Motion by Councilman Reed, second by Councilwoman Bowen. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, the consent calendar is approved. Town manager's report.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council, for the sake of time and efficiency, I'm not going to read through all of my report, but basically you've got some updates there on high-level stuff that's going on, just a very brief synopsis of things. I do want to mention that our water treatment plant, that's all got here, did receive an award from the Department of Health for performance for excellence in clarification, filtration, and backwash. So, just want to make the public aware and you aware that our water treatment plant is doing an excellent job with operations and providing clean water to the citizens. Also want to give praise to our code enforcement and police department, Chief Dixon and Officer Morgan, and our public works guys for stepping up on grass and out with the vehicles and doing a good job on that. So we want to highlight.
I second that.
That's about all I got on report wise.
Okay, any questions for the town manager on his report? I want to thank you for your report, Brian. This is very extensive and it shows that we're really moving along.
Finished at 4:30 today.
Well, there you go. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the mayor's report. So just a few quick things from the mayor's report. I want to remind everyone that the county has small business grants, COVID grants. So if you own a small business or one of your friends owns a small business that has suffered economically from the current pandemic, you can apply to the county for some grant funding to offset some of your losses. You would need to get a hold of the county administrator's office for the application. And you have until the end of the month, I believe, for the first round of grants to apply for those. So I would encourage anyone that owns a small business to take that initiative and move forward. An unfortunate piece of news, council will remember that we put in a application video for the HGTV Hometown Takeover. Unfortunately, a different locality was selected. Some town in Alabama that also, interestingly, given some of the comments by our legislators, has a casino in or around the town. So you know, we'll we'll try again the next time it comes around. But it was a good effort, and I think everyone enjoyed the process.
It was a great job by you guys making that film too. It was really good film.
Thank you. Just some structural changes that you'll note on the agenda. The first is committees. Currently, you don't see any area for committee reports because how we handle that is still going to be decided by council. What we want to do is try to eliminate the exercise in bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. So really only having committees that are functional or even ad hoc committees dedicated to a specific project. Like I said, council will be able to talk about that in a work session or a planning session and really determine how we want that to look. But the point of that would be to, again, try to decrease on bureaucracy and make council's efforts more fruitful. A couple other things to that extent on being more fruitful with our time and being able to listen to the citizens. I am proposing and actually going to be hosting, and council is invited to join me, town hall sessions. Supervisor Rourke and I will be having every other month a town hall session where we just come in and the primary intent is to listen to citizens, hear what they have to say. We may or may not respond, and we may just gather the information and try to help, but we're going to try to have those listening sessions every other month. Our first one will be scheduled for August 3rd. As I mentioned, council is invited. We'll go ahead and advertise for that as we would a public meeting, simply because if there are more than two of us in a room, or two of you in a room, it is technically a public meeting. But don't feel compelled to come if you can't fit into your schedule. But just know that opportunity is out there. We'll also look at the possibility of, I don't know if we can do it the first time, but live streaming, so that individuals who can't come out to be physically present can have an opportunity to let their to listen in and to also let their voices be heard via social media. Like I said, that's optional. What is a little less optional, I mean, of course, you can do with council can do with their time what they want, are the occasional work session as needed. I believe that a work session is needed just to go over some of these structural things, the committees, talking a little bit about the goals and vision. We also need to discuss some of the logistics surrounding the proposed planning session that we have budgeted. So with that, is the 27th good for council?
Of July,
Yes. That's 2 weeks from today.
Monday night,
Correct.
what time?
What time is good for council?
Earlier rather than later.
And I
We
know
need to.
some
people's
work
schedules are.
work late.
I'm good.
Councilman Reed? Is there-
I can't tell you right off the top of my head. I'll
Okay,
have to
nope, that's fine.
be back.
Well, we'll preliminarily plan for 6:30 and go from there. Let me,
Be here?
yep, we'll do that here. I think it's the easiest way that we can socially distance more here than in our other conference room. And that is it for the mayor's report. Are there any questions? Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the town attorney's report.
Yes, thank you. I had sent email memos later on this evening to town council, but I also have hard copies of my memos too, so whoever needs them, I can pass them around and distribute them. Okay, I'll make sure to, okay. I'll pass it to you this way, and this way. All right, and so just to highlight a few things I have going on, I'm not gonna go into too much detail for the sake of time, but derelict buildings, we're still, I'm still assisting the town manager with taking down derelict buildings, franchise information. The town manager and I met, had a telephone conference with Chantel. That's one thing that's on the town council's agenda tonight, is to pass the resolution approving that agreement. We did, it was a long drawn out process, made longer by COVID, but we did explore some various options with Chantel, and I truly believe that what we have is the best agreement that Chantel could provide to us. The election, town council has two things that they need to do tonight. Pursuant to the code, number one is town council needs to vote to fill Councilman Sis' vacant seat. And that really does need to be done tonight. You all can wait until next month, but you'd really be pressing on the 45-day statutory period. And if you don't do it in the time period, then the circuit court gets involved, and so I would, recommend you all go ahead. Now, regarding the election, special election, it is my legal advice that town council needs to go ahead and vote to have a special election to end up filling the vacancy that Councilman Sis created. And the reason I say that, and the town charter does give some reference to the fact that the town council can fill a vacancy by appointment. But it is my legal opinion, number one, that the state code would trump that, and number two, that, if we do not request the special election and we just rely on an appointment to fill that vacancy after November, we may, if anybody ever were to question the town about it and legally take it to court, we may run into an issue where it would call into question any votes that that person would have made. Also, we could have potential quorum issues. And so my approach is to always be on the safe side, to ask the court for approval rather than forgiveness at the end of the day. So bottom line, tonight I'm recommending two things to town council. Number one is you all need to fill the vacancy. Number two, my advice is that you all vote to have me petition the court to set the special election. My advice is that, and it's up to you all when you all will want the election set, given the parameters in the code. But generally speaking, it makes the most sense to vote on it to set it in November. And so if you all are going to do that, we definitely need to go ahead and do that tonight so I can get the petition in front of the judge and make sure that he sees it in time to sign the order to set it. And what the special election does is that would fill the vacancy, and so the appointment would last until January 1st, and then at that time, the person elected in the special election would qualify and then serve the rest of Councilman's term.
Just a couple of questions on
Yes.
the second recommendation. It says here in your memo that the Crew Charter says town council may vote to fill a vacancy until the end of the term. I believe that the charter says town council shall fill a vacancy. And then just can you explain me how our charter does not control when the applicability section of the so in the state code for council, it says under 24.2-226 or 227 that in the event of a vacancy, the council can fill the position and then petition the court. But in the preceding section, 24.2-225 applicability, it says, and you should all have this in front of you, this article applies to vacancies in any elected constitutional or local office if there is no other statutory or charter provisions for filling a vacancy in the office. There is a very clear charter provision for filling a vacancy in the office, and it's not not even an option for Crew Town Council. It, as it says, we shall perform this action. So if 24.2-226 is not applicable, and our charter says that we shall do something, how can we do otherwise?
I think that the issue we run into, and I'm glad that you asked about that, because certainly one thing I would recommend doing, if that is a question, is we can always ask in our petition to the court to determine whether the charter position does override the election law. But I will say that, section 8.1 from the town charter does say, that elections are governed by state law. And it says in there that all town elections shall be held and conducted in the manner prescribed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And if we were to have a special election for filling vacancy, sure, certainly that would be relevant. But if, under the question of whether or not we should have that a petition for a special election, and of course it's council's decision. It's just my position that as courts are entities of the state, to ask permission to do something that is within the power of a locality would be to cede local power to the state. But we'll save that for council's discussion when we get to that item on the agenda.
And just to answer that, as legal counsel for the town, it is always my position to ask for approval rather than ask for forgiveness. So I would just err on the side of that, and if we do something that we may be sure of, but we're not 100% sure of, the effects of that could be bad at the end of the day. But I certainly understand your position and respect it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the town attorney?
So are we waiting to vote on this?
We will need to fill a vacancy, I believe, first before we petition the court.
Right. Are we gonna take a vote on whether we're gonna petition the court or not tonight?
Yes.
That's under new business.
And
That's what I was saying.
I would recommend
So we
that,
can only make motions under new business, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess theoretically, you could make a motion at any point, if we want
I
to.
guess, but it's all,
It's on the agenda.
It's under new business, so we'll wait for new business if that's okay.
thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. New business.
Aaron, did you have something you'd like to say?
The first item on the agenda for new business is the rezoning request of 200 West Tennessee Avenue. You heard from in the public comment section. Are there any motions by council?
I move that we rezone it, C1.
Motion by Aaron Reed to rezone, and a second by Councilman Davis. Is there any discussion on the issue?
I'd just like to say that that facility's been used for that purpose. I've been here 49 years next week, and it's been that since, it's been that since then. I don't know why there'd be any question over it. It seems to be a system.
I guess I'm curious as to why it's happening now and it hasn't happened in the past. And I don't know.
Well,
It's been operating as a community center forever.
right. I cannot answer that.
I'll answer it.
And
It's liability. Because I own it.
I think it's
Yeah,
based
insurance
on my
purposes.
conversation with town manager, it was about house cleaning. It should be.
To answer your question, every locality has non-conforming uses, so this is not a unique occurrence. It's just a cleanup to allow it to be a conforming use, is basically what it is.
so it's part of our process to progress the tenant. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? And abstentions?
Please, please, I abstain.
Okay, motion passes. Next up on the agenda is the Shentel Cable Television Franchise Agreement Renewal and Amendment. And we have a request by the town manager to adopt the resolution.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council, you may be aware that the existing cable television franchise agreement with Shentel expired August 10th, 2017. Since that time, both parties have been operating under the existing agreement on a month-to-month basis. And as the county attorney has said, we have met with them on the phone, had a phone meeting with them. Jesse's been more involved with it than I have, but we do recommend you adopt the attached resolution approving the renewal and amendment of the cable and television franchise agreement with Shentel Cable and Television LLC for a term of 15 years.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? Before we go to a vote on that? Ms. Bates?
Yes, go ahead.
Coming into this is obviously something that predated Sue and I. Am I correct in understanding, I see there are several iterations going back to 97, 07, 17. The original agreement that's in our pack is very much more involved than the resolutions following that. You know, am I correct in assuming that this is a renewal of those original terms?
Correct, that's correct, and then the subsequent revisions of those terms through the resolutions with the current revisions too.
I have a question, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask about the Shentel because, we just moved on Indian Oak, and I was wondering, are they gonna expand their services in Crew?
I can't speak to whether they will expand them as a company. I can speak to the fact that that was not part of the agreement, that they were willing to, you know, negotiate more. They are, through this process, what I have realized more than anything is they're very heavily regulated by several different governing localities, and so you may want to reach out to a customer representative from them and just talk to them and tell them there's a need for it.
Yeah, well, I did, because we couldn't get service. We've had service on Archer Street, but can't get it on Indian Oak, so I was like, wow.
Council, any motions?
Motion we approve the resolution.
Motion by Councilman Davis to approve, and a second by Councilman Abel. Any other discussion by council? Hearing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is Planning Commission request to appoint members.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a request to appoint members to the Planning Commission. Per town code, which you do have in the state code, the Planning Commission shall be comprised of 5 members. The Planning Commission is currently comprised of 4 members. As such, council needs to appoint an additional member to the Planning Commission. Furthermore, in looking at our records, the current members of the Planning Commission also need to be assigned terms. We couldn't find any assigned terms with the town clerk. So kind of we're starting from scratch on the assigned terms. So I'm do ask that you appoint 1 member to town council, from town council, to the Planning Commission, which is allowed by state and town code. And that individual's tenure shall run concurrent with his or her term in office. And also recommending you reappoint the current members to the terms you have there. Robbie Knight, 4 years. Arthur Booth, 3 years. Matt Booth, 2 years. With Wilson, 1 year. You have the town and state code sections there.
Okay, are there any individuals from council who would like to serve on the Planning Commission under the council role?
It's really fun.
Okay, Councilwoman Yates would like to serve. Are there anyone else? Okay, well, we'll go ahead, if it pleases council, include Councilwoman Yates on that, and that term is for
2 years. Term of
2 years here. Okay, that makes sense. So you've heard from the town manager.
Are the other individuals that are on the planning commission, have they agreed to stay on, or are we just assuming?
Yeah, I mean, they, since you don't have terms now, I guess the question's never been asked, because their terms never expired. So they can decline to be on the planning commission regardless now. So I did touch base with Robbie Knight, he did agree to be on, and I haven't touched base with others, but they can, if they didn't want to, they can resign. They're not going to suffer any pay loss or anything.
So the question before council is appointing Councilwoman Yates to a 2-year term to run concurrent with her current role. Robbie Knight to 4 years, Mark Booth to 3 years, Matt Dews to 2 years, and Whip Wilson to 1-year terms. Is there a motion by council?
Yes, I move that we appoint the recommended members.
Motion by Vice Mayor Stinson,
I'll second.
and second by Councilwoman Bowen. Any other discussion by council? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the election of the vice mayor. And you'll see in your packet, we'll get more organized one day. Our town charter requires that we appoint a individual to serve as vice mayor. It could be any member of council. And I will leave open the floor to motions from council for the position of vice mayor.
Make a motion that we appoint Councilwoman Stinson as the vice mayor.
I'd like a question. Hasn't it been customary in the past that the person that got the second highest or the most votes would have the opportunity to serve in that position? Which would mean that Wendy would become vice mayor.
That has been
I'll make
for as long as I've been on council, that's been.
I'll make a competing motion that Wendy Bowen be appointed vice mayor of town clerk.
You would second that motion?
Okay, well, first, was there a second for Ann Stinson to serve as vice mayor? Okay, and there was a motion and a second to, for Wendy Bowen to serve as vice mayor. Are there any other motions? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to close the floor for nominations.
So moved.
Okay, and a second to close the floor for nominations.
Second.
Okay, so the only individual to have a motion and second is Councilwoman Bowen. All in favor of Councilwoman Bowen serving as vice mayor?
Aye.
All opposed? And abstentions? One abstention. Congratulations. And
Congratulations, Wendy.
on that. Okay. Next up on the agenda that I lost. Oh, there it is. Council vacancy, request to fill. And we've heard that Councilmember Sisk has been sworn in and then subsequently resigned from the election that he's won. Is there any discussion on council first on whether or not to, well, I guess, discussion or nominations for council?
My thought is we give it to the person who got the most amount of votes besides Stevie, which would be Jess Foss,
Okay,
because she was the highest amount of votes.
any other discussion from council?
I think we should petition to have the special election in November. I think we should fill it temporarily until November and then have a special election. I'd like, that's what I think.
Are you saying you want to fill it and then,
Fill it, just like.
okay, right, okay.
Fill it temporarily and then have a special election in November, whoever wins that is.
Okay. So I guess the first order of business is any member of council opposed to filling it now?
No.
Okay, so I'll open the floor for nominations to fill the unexpired term of Councilman Sisk.
We'll make a motion to put Jess Foss in Councilmember Sisk's position.
Motion by Councilwoman Bowen and Vice Mayor Bowen, and a second by Councilwoman Yates to appoint Jess Foss. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the floor and appoint Jess Foss to serve the unexpired term of Councilman Sisk. And, okay. And all in favor? All opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Fox.
Pull up a chair.
The next part of the piece of business is whether or not to petition the court to have a special election.
I make a motion that we petition the court to have a special election in November.
Motion by Councilman Reed and a second by Councilwoman Stinson. Any discussion from council?
I've got a stipulation on that we petition the court with the verbiage that's in our charter
Certainly.
to see if we need to have that special election, since she was the person that was voted in with Stevie withdrawing his nomination.
Will you accept that as a friendly amendment, Councilman Reed?
The motion I'd like to make is to have a special election in November. That's the motion that I make.
Okay. Any other discussion?
So I have to understand, can someone make a motion to not have a special election?
So what
Make me
would happen
understand,
now?
'cause I
If,
need-
so
He needs a second, and he doesn't have one at this point.
I believe he did have a second.
Yeah.
So what would happen
That's right.
in terms of process is that because the motion was made and seconded, we're now in the discussion phase. Once the discussion phase ends, if you don't like the what the motion was, you would then vote against it. And then if the motion fails, you could make a motion for a new, or make a different motion.
My question is, on this, is if we have a special election in November, since we're already having an election, does the town have to pay for this?
Yes,
The town would have to pay the $3,000.
I believe so. I know that Cambridge had a similar special election where they had to pay for the ballots to be printed and things like that. So I would say, just to be on the cautious side and have everything out there, that the town council should realize that they'll have to pay for printing the ballots. Hopefully, it will be less since we're already having an election, but I wouldn't count on that. And then, yeah.
No, okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion is to have to petition the court to have a special election in November. All in favor? Was 7 aye? Okay, and all opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, 2 to 4, the motion carries. Now that we did that, I guess the question is, if the judge says that we should not have a special election, because it's ultimately up to the judge's interpretation of our charter.
Is she even gonna put that?
Yeah, I think the motion was just to not ask the question.
I didn't ask the question on whether the court thought we should or not. I'm asking if we can ask the court to have one, period. That was the motion.
Okay, right, but there is still the opportunity where the court says, no, you cannot have one because your
If
charter
they
says
say we
this.
can't, then
Right.
exactly,
Okay.
then we can't, right.
But
We have to ask them,
the
right?
verbiage referencing town code would not be included in her request to the circuit court. Therefore, Judge Sulla probably won't even read that into it.
And
He's
see,
gonna issue a request.
That was what I was asking, is to make the motion to the court, but have the judge decide whether our charter would cover it, so we wouldn't have to.
Absolutely.
But then you voted yay.
I know.
We voted.
Yeah, it's done.
Well, theoretically, you could, because you voted on the prevailing side of the motion, you could move to reopen the other question.
Okay, I reopen the question to put the verbiage in the,
Having voted on the prevailing side of the motion, Councilwoman Bowen moves to reopen the question for discussion. Is there a second? And a second. All in favor of reopening the question for discussion?
No.
Nay.
All opposed?
Nay.
3-3, the council is tied. Chair votes aye. Okay.
I would make the motion that the request to the circuit court judge be made according to town attorney's recommendations as written and provided for us in our documents this evening.
Okay. Is there a second?
Didn't the town attorney recommend first? Now
She recommended what I was saying, did you not? That we,
We can certainly, my recommendation, number one, bottom line, is we need to have a special
That's
election.
that's the town
Petition.
attorney's recommendation.
Yeah.
Petition.
Number two is that I have done a petition for a special election recently where I have included the, request for the judge to say the town charter. So, it's not legally impermissible to ask for that. So it will be whatever the council desires, but I already have a template for it, if that's what council desires.
But the only reason you recommended that is because you want to err on the side of being safe as opposed to doing it our way, we might say, and having the judge rule against us.
Ms.
Right.
Baker, what would your recommendation be?
My recommendation would be ask for the election and then to, in the election petition, put in there the town charter, reference and say, if the judge believes that the town charter trumps it, then, there will be an order to say no special election. If he doesn't, then there would be an order to say special election. Then we're still preserving the right to, maybe there's a small chance that the judge would say the charter trumps it, and then we'll save ourselves a lot of money in time. The judge will probably say we have to have a special election, but at least we could ask for it and see. And if the judge signs off on the order that says the charter does trump it and we don't have a special election, well then, that's even better because then we don't have to, number one, spend the time and expense, and number two, we would also have the judge's blessing if anybody ever came back and tried to contest it.
And also, by asking the question, we are answering the question for in perpetuity.
Agreed.
At least in this town, because every charter is different.
Right.
Okay.
So hearing that, is there a motion on the floor?
I made my motion.
Okay, according to the town attorney's recommendation?
Our suggestion within the documents we were given is that we would continue that way.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been made, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And I'm gonna try to get that out ASAP because it needs to be in front of the judge. And I'm also assuming that everybody is good with having this election at the next general election in November, correct?
Absolutely.
yes,
Okay, so I'll
if
get
we're
it.
not allowed to keep it.
Yes.
Any other new business by council?
I would just like to mention something in passing. I got a phone call from a resident of Gatewood.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's aware that there were some goings-ons over in that neighborhood, and it's been brought to my attention that the security lighting is not there that's present in the rest of the town. And I know, talking with Brian, that he's talked with folks out in the shop about trying to get with Dominion. I'd like to see us make a little bit more concerted effort to try to get to that. No neighborhood in this town should be without some sort of security lighting, especially one that's been prone to window knockers and door knockers. And Troy said when he called the other night, town was tied up and they waited for a trooper to get there. Just don't feel like Aaron and his neighborhood should be the only one in town. And it's more expensive and it's a process, but I'd like to see us talk about that further. Maybe have Brian reach out. We've got, Sherry's not here tonight, but one of the ladies in the neighborhood son is a VP with Dominion. It might be able to help us get some resolution, they're going through the normal change. I just wanted that on record that that's been brought to me. And would like further discussion down the road as things, I'm sure Aaron probably has it.
Yeah, he approached me about it. Actually, I don't know how many people I copied. It was a council changeover, but I shot a message to Brian and Ann and the chief about it. So I was just really wondering, what's the process? How do we get street lights? How do we get a street light there?
I do know that Robbie Knight talked to Dominion extensively a few times about that issue on that block, and that Dominion told him it would be a $16,000 charge for the town to put a street light there because the wires were underground in that neighborhood. There's no above ground, and they are in the alley. So, you know, my suggestion would be to talk to them about putting one of those solar lights up, you know, the dusk to dawn in that area. And I know Dominion has those.
Is this something you can look into?
So just to let you know, the police chief and public works director and I did go over there and looked at the situation. I wasn't aware there were no street lights on the whole street, but that's the situation. So we are getting estimates now for different scenarios from Dominion, and when I get that information, I'll provide it to council. We can think of potential next steps.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. Farrell.
So, just so I know, I guess what I was looking at is some type of, you know, definite answer. Is the town gonna put a light on the street? I mean, are we gonna, because we've been looking into it for a while. It was brought up, you know, I don't know, about a year ago. So, is that the general consensus here, is that we're gonna get a light up? We're just gonna figure out the most cost-effective way to do it? Is that what I'm hearing?
I imagine we would need to look at cost alternatives
I
and.
think it's been identified that it's there.
Is it within the current budget?
Y'all put about, if I remember correctly, about $35,000 in the operating budget for streetlights, which I believe pays the power bill for the streetlights, and I think it was estimated we were going to hit that $35,000 in cost this year. So it's really, if you just look at it straight in that line item, you're pretty much going to hit that $35,000 without adding streetlights. So some of this depends on how much the estimate or estimates come in at, and how much, we do have some wiggle room in the budget, and generally, the way I've handled it in other communities, I'll get with the chief and public works director, and it's usually a very minimal cost, but the poles and the lines are already there. In this situation, there are no poles or lines, and it's gonna cost more, so, and we're talking about scales of budget also, so I can't give you that answer because I don't know the cost of the.
Which is why I would recommend when Brian comes back with that information, if we don't have anything that seems feasible off the bat, please let us know so we can maybe leverage some contacts within the community of people who have higher level contacts with that company to see. I mean, it's completely ridiculous that they have their lights in their street. I mean, the things that have been going on over there, there's a reason for that. And if, you know, chief doesn't have 3 officers at night, they can ride on that block all night. We have a primary responsibility of safety and security for the residents, and that's what we need to be looking at, whatever the option is.
Perfect. So if the town manager can determine how to do it administratively without bringing it to council, he will do so. If it is not in current budget, he'll come to council with the alternatives. And if there's anyone who wants to work with the town manager to figure it out administratively, whether that's leveraging other contacts or what have you, so it doesn't need to come before council, we can go about it that way. So let's go ahead and table this, if it be the will of council. Table this until the work session on the 27th. Thank you. And we can listen to the alternatives then. Okay. Perfect. Is there anything else by council or new business or continuing business from council? Okay, then we will move into the public comment section of the meeting. Are there any public comments?
I'd like to thank our town manager for attending the railroad board of directors meeting last month, and to let the public know that we are open now on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we desperately need help.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, could you just say your name for the record?
Sue Williamson.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I'd like to also say that we need to start back cleaning up the town again. I've noticed different places in town that stuff has been removed, but we need a whole lot more of it removed.
Yes, ma'am.
And I said something to the town manager at the meeting that I need to know something about Christmas parade because I start on that in September.
Mm,
And it's a lot of work to do for one person.
Thank you. And if anyone has any specific properties that they notice that need, for which they have a complaint, feel free to reach out to the town manager and make those known. And we are doing a very extensive, very aggressive blight reduction.
There were 97 letters sent out, am I correct in that? On yards and cleanups? Is that right, Chief?
Yeah, I think the town manager has the numbers.
Yeah.
Any other public comments? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, let me say congratulations on your election. I certainly welcome the 2 new council members. I've been coming to these meetings for a little over a year now. I'm glad to see that there are actually people here other than myself and Ms. Williams. So, but I have a couple of concerns. Number one, this is the second meeting that I've come to where no minutes, we did have to, I did get an agenda, which I'm happy about. There wasn't anything distributed at the last meeting. When you go on the town's website, the link that says click here to get the minutes doesn't work. And so I think if people want to be engaged in what's going on in the town, they need information. Mr. Thrower to say that, he has an extensive report, but he doesn't want to go through it because doesn't want to take up a lot of time is not a good position to take. We really need to understand what's going on. We know that there are challenges that you all are facing. Certainly, I'd like to see a copy of the new budget that you voted on last month, but no copies were provided, so I have no idea what's in that budget. So I think if we're going to be partners, we need to be more informed about what's going on in the town. The second thing that I wanted to raise was how do we, what is going to be the process going forward in terms of establishing priorities? I know we have a limited budget. We can't do everything. Every time I come to these meetings and I see the gentleman from the fire department, I like cringe because I've heard over and over what their needs are. We keep raising the issue of blight over and over again. You guys can't do everything in the next year, maybe the next 2 or 3 years, but it would be helpful if you could identify 2 or 3 priorities. So that's my request going forward. If the council can get together in its work sessions and come up with 1 or 2 key priorities that we can focus on the next year so that we can sort of move the town forward.
Yes,
Those are my
ma'am.
comments.
Thank you. And just to respond to some of the items that you mentioned, and this is simply to explain, not to necessarily excuse, but I believe the last meeting we had intended to continue the strict COVID restrictions where where individuals would not be allowed in. We changed that at the last minute, given the town hall that we had immediately preceding, and we just allowed people to stay, which is why no minutes were necessarily copied for that meeting. For this meeting, I know that we are short-staffed. Our town clerk, who is a very dedicated individual who generally handles all this and keeps us on track in terms of minutes, is on maternity leave. But going forward, we'll certainly have copies of the minutes, and I'll talk to the town manager about getting the website fixed. In terms of priorities, that is one of the items that we'll be talking about either at the planning session or our work session. But it's certainly something that we'll establish expeditiously.
Good.
Any other public comments during the points of personal privilege? Yes. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to what should be points of personal privilege under there. And again, this is an opportunity for those of you who are new to council to make any last statements, to make any announcements, promote any events, things of that nature. The term points of personal privilege is a term within Robert's Rules of Order, but it basically means an opportunity for you to speak at the end. So we'll start with Councilman Davis. Councilman Abel.
I just would like to request, I guess, the alley that runs from Carter Street to Tyler Street. I think that's considered a main thoroughfare. People use it all the time. Most days, I think all weekend, there's a car sit there with no license plates. I didn't see any on. Sitting there and the alley stays blocked up. I made numerous requests to keep the alley open. I had a lot of requests from people to keep the alley open. I think it needs to be open. You know, I don't think you should have to drive in on the lane of traffic because somebody's illegally parked in there.
You said Carter and
Tyler.
Don't they run perpendicular? Is there an alley between?
Runs, yes. Runs from Carter all the way up to Tyler.
Behind AJ.
Behind AJ's.
Oh, that part of, okay, I'm thinking it.
Okay.
Usually it's a
The
whole
other
lot of
corner.
cars in that alley.
Okay,
I'd just like to see it opened up, and a lot of requests.
okay. We can look into that, especially if it's, I know there are some concerns about, but we'll definitely look into that.
I mean, if they're gonna allow parking in that area, parking all of them, block every one of them up.
Right, no, alleyway should be open. Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Stinson.
No privileges.
Councilwoman Yates.
I'd like to address Mrs. Anderson over there, or Sue Williamson. I'm really excited about the fact that we have Brian as a town manager. And so I beg of everybody here in the town right now to be patient with this new regime. I think he's doing a great job at getting this blight problem addressed. You know, just trying to get, when I hear that they put out 97 notices, and I drive around town to see everything that they have already done, I just want to really commend them for making that happen, and the police chief too, following through with all of this. And be patient, because these guys can't go out, we don't have the manpower to do it all at once. So they have to kind of pick their projects and move through them, and I just want to recognize them. I think they're doing a really good job, so.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bowman.
I second what Sue just said. I think over around the garment factory area is looking fabulous. I'm seeing a lot of people take more pride in their properties, being as that they've been issued these notices. I've seen more people out working in their yards and stuff, and that's the only way we're gonna get people to come to the town is to clean it up. So the second thing is Jane Home, that's a majority of the time the only Peru citizen that is in our attendance, a majority of the time, usually sits right around there where Sue Williamson sits. Her brother was killed in a vehicle accident yesterday, well, the one at 723 and 460. And today, I believe, is her 80th birthday. So I'd like for everybody to keep her in your thoughts. She's a sweet lady, and that was a very bad accident there. So, and hats off to the EMS and first responders for everything that you guys do in handling those types of situations.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Reed.
Just want to thank the chief and the department for staying out there every day and doing a great job. Fire chief and the fire department as well, public works department, cleaning things up. Everybody seems to be working hard. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Reed, second by Councilman Abel. All in favor? All opposed?